The time is 5:02 and the Warwick City Council Finance Committee is now in session. May I have a motion for acceptance of the minutes for the meeting held on April 1st, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We are now on to PCR 35-24, resolution relative to bids. May I have a motion for the committee meeting held on April 1st, 2024?
Acceptance of minutes. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item number 1 is bid 2025-001, maintenance and repairs of Thayer Warburton Arenas. Good evening, Chrissy. Please identify.
Good evening, Christy Moretti, Public Works. Public Works is requesting to award the bid for maintenance and repairs at Thayer and Warburton Arenas in the amount of $50,000 for a one-year period to environmental systems. The bid begins July 1st, 2024 and expires June 30th, 2025.
Thank you. So you said that this is primarily for, in your letter, for the compressor?
Yes, it is only for the compressor, that compressor room.
And this is the compressor we have to do the maintenance, but this is also part of the system that we're looking to replace.
Yes.
Yep.
So, and we're hoping that with what we're doing now as far as repairs and replacement, that we won't have as much need for this contract. This is just our general yearly, we have a service call or
Right.
to do maintenance, things like that. But in general, this is apart from the work that's going on right now.
Right. And I do want to commend your department for, as you mentioned in the last meeting, but also we've spoken of, that compressor is over 20 years old. And,
Yes.
or those compressors, but that
Yes.
compressor is over 20, those compressors are over 20 years old. And the fact that they're still going, and there was a big gap there where maybe they weren't given the best service and the best follow-up. So the fact that we're being proactive, I want to thank you for that. So this is just, as you said, just a follow through. Is there any questions for members of the committee?
No.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from members of the council? Councilman Lattisaw.
Thank you, Chairman. Hi, Christy.
Good evening.
Christy, this repairs to the compressor or compressor systems that you're referring to in your position paper. Is this part of the answer you provided to Councilman Gebhardt with the cost of, I think it was chillers and compressors? You said it was going to be about $10 million for both of the ice rinks. Is this part of that equipment you're talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
if we were to replace the equipment that we are having worked on right now,
Right.
yes, it would cost $8 to $10 million, and that's only the equipment that you can see visually. It doesn't include anything that is under the floors
Sure.
or any of that, those kinds of items.
So eventually, that's all going to have to get replaced. So eventually, in addition to the monies that you're being forced to put into it now, we're facing at some point another bill of $8 to $10 million at some point. Thank you.
Are there any further questions from members of the council? Questions from members of the public? Questions from members of the public? Thank you. Next would be bid 2025-017. This is found on page 3. It is DPW janitorial and cleaning supplies for the Department of Public Works. Good evening again, Christy.
Good evening, Christy Moretti, Public Works. The Public Works Department, is requesting to award this bid in the amount of $50,000, June 25th, 2024 to June 24th, 2025, to 4 of the 14 vendors that we received bids from, WB Mason, Staples, Glove Cleaners, and Geriatric Medical and Surgical Supply.
Thank you, and I apologize in advance. I meant to ask you this, and I completely forgot, and so now that it's in front of me, all the different codes, that's all the different buildings of the different departments that that your department will oversee in getting those supplies?
Yes, so from the top, we have there in Warburton, we have McDermott Pool, building maintenance, field maintenance, and the automotive garage.
Thank you. And also this is not on a rider of the state. This is, you went out for bid on, the city went out to bid on this. This is not on the coattails
That's
of a
correct.
state bid.
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Questions from members of the council? Questions from members of the public? Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
We will now get into the items where I will call that are below the 50,000 threshold. I will call on members of this committee, members of the council, and members of the public on items they may wish to speak about. I have one per request of the department. That is item number 4, which is bid 2025-025. I also am, one moment, please. Are there anyone from the members of the committee that have any other items?
I have one, I'm just trying to. Item 7, 2025-016, Fire Department promotional exams.
Thank you. Please tell me the numbers again. Oh, I have it
Number
right here.
7.
Thank you. Number 7.
2025.
Yep.
016.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm here to help you. Dan.
Councilman Gebhardt? Thank you. Yes, sir, I'll get, yep. In one moment, please. Thank you. Got it. I'd also like to call item number 11, which is bid 2023-310, per request of the department. Are there any? Council President McAllister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to discuss item number 3, 2024-024 e-permitting.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first one. Councilman Gebhardt. Councilman Gebhardt requests item number 14, bid 2025-027, MIS Department, Munis. Are there any members of the council? Councilman Lattisaur.
Item number 9, traffic signs, channel posts, and materials found on page 26.
Thank you. Are there any further items from members of the council? Are there any items that members of the public would like to discuss on the bid package? Are there any items members of the public would like to discuss on the bid package? Thank you. We'll go in order as per usual, and so therefore I will call on the council president. This is item number 3, bid 2024-024, MIS e-permitting. Phil, please identify. Council president, you have the floor.
Phil Carlucci, IT Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Director.
Good evening.
E-permitting, I think is the best way we continue to do it. I was pleased to see that the police department has increased what they're doing with the e-permitting as well. You noted that in your write-up here. Are most departments that kind of issue these permits or licenses and stuff like that, are we all taking advantage of this e-permitting, or are there other departments that maybe we could get up to speed?
We still think there's some opportunities left. Right now, we're focusing with the police department because they had a list of about 4 or 5, I believe, different permitting type licenses that they were using, pieces of paper, money, checks written in their presence as compared to the online system. Once we get through those, we'll just start chipping away at anything else that we have an opportunity to do.
Excellent. Yeah, no, we've got to take advantage of technology when we can, and I think that'll help the process, especially building and building departments, stuff like that. Get these applications in and get them processed and get them out there. So I was just pleased to see that the police department has joined in and trying to issue as many as they can as well. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Any questions for members of this committee? Questions from members of the council? Councilman Lattisaur.
Thank you, Chairman. Hi, Director.
Hello.
So e-permitting is certainly something I've been a excuse me, strong proponent of for many years. I was actually heavily involved in the legislative process of getting this done, of moving through the process. An extremely valuable tool to contractors and builders and developers as a whole. And Warwick was one of the first communities to actually start using this. The only question I have is in the second paragraph of your position paper, it says, since this is a mandated software by the state, as happened last year, we anticipate that they will reimburse the city for the portion of the cost associated to the building department. How certain is anticipate, and what do you think that number would be?
I don't think I broke it down in the position. I can get you that answer for a dollar amount of what the building department spends.
Mhm.
I'm 99% sure. I don't have the check, so I can't guarantee it 100%, but in previous years, they reimburse for the portion that's allocated to the building department. There's a portion that goes to the fire department that we pay for, and a portion that goes to now the police department that we pay for, sewer and some others, but for the most part, they have been 100% reimbursing us for the building piece.
Okay, great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, comments from members of the council? Questions, comments from members of the public? Thank you. If no one else objects within the committee, I would like just to keep the director up there since we have a couple items that we're going to ask on. So I'm going to, if you don't mind, is that okay with you as well as Councilman Lattisaur? Do you have an issue? Thank you. So we'll go right to item number 11, which is bid 2023-310, Director. Per your request, this is found on page 31. This is State of Rhode Island Software and Services for Database. You have the mic.
Thank you. I had received a phone call from Councilman Lattisaur, rightfully so. I had a line in my position letter that says this is significantly higher than previous years because now it includes the training portion from the same company that was being handled by the fire department. I'm incorrect in that. This is the second year. It's the first year I've budgeted for it. So I was doing the budget at the time, writing my notes for the budget. Why is this going up? It's because we're handling the training piece of it, but actually because we weren't doing a piece of software for this fiscal year 24, I had paid for it using that money. For fiscal year 25, which this letter is referencing, I now have budgeted for that extra amount. And it's just an incorrect statement in that, but I wanted to clarify it for anyone because there was actually only about a 5 or 6% increase this year, 37,000 something to 39,000. It's about 5 or 6%, which is normal for software increases.
So the amount that is being bid on is correct. It's just a simple comment in your position paper.
The comment isn't true. It isn't a significant increase from last year. It's a significant budget increase, but not an expenditure increase.
Thank you. Are there any questions, concerns, or comments from members of this committee? Questions, concerns, or comments from members of the council? Questions, concerns, or comments from members of the public? Thank you. We'll move on to... So now we'll go on to item number 14, 2025-027. This was requested by Councilman Gebhardt. This is the PACE 9 training contract for Munis, found on page 73. Councilman Gebhardt.
Director, the only thing I didn't see in your letters, who's being trained?
We actually pick that during the year. We usually take some type of manual piece of our process within the city, and we look at what we have already paid for the Munis modules. and that's what we'll pick one to focus on. Most likely, right now, our utility billing, we use a product called Opal, which I believe is owned by Vision. And you'll understand this. It's based in Fox Pro. So, yeah, exactly. So we're looking at that. We get, along with our PACE training, we get a free, included in the price, evaluation where Tyler will come in for a day or two with their module expert, look at what you're doing, what you're taking advantage of, and highlight to you what you're not using, what you're not taking advantage of that would give you some efficiency improvements. Last year we did human resource, so this year's training really focused on a lot of the human resource processes that we're still continuing to improve on. We're looking at utility billing in June with our free 2-day evaluation. Most likely that's going to, sketch out some projects where we want to do additional training in that area to use the module that we already own.
Okay. Got it. And if we increased this, could you do more, or is there just like a certain amount of this that you can handle at one time?
Well, since we brought Chris back on, he's able to focus on this. And I used to have a hard time by myself. I had a hard time getting 5 days, just getting people's time where it was meaningful. Now 9 seems to be about the right amount. We hit last year, I believe we came back and asked for another day or two because it just worked out that way. But that's a good amount to get focused on an efficiency improvement and not tax people's time. They have daily jobs, and pulling out for a half day or a whole day at a time. It's a lot to ask with other training that's going on.
Okay, got it. Yeah, it's a great area to focus on. So we'd be happy to see you come back with more requests.
All set? Thank you, sir. Questions for members of the committee? Questions for members of the council? Questions for members of the public? Questions for members of the public? You're not done yet, Phil. One more. So next in the final, wait a minute. Yes, you are. No, that's right.
310.
I lost it.
23,
Number
310.
2. Thank you. This one. Yep, 2025, 25. Yeah. I checked that one off. We already spoke about MIS, Emergency Services Workforce Management.
Yes, this is 2023 310.
Yep,
Software contract services.
that's true.
I only know that because I'm reading it.
We have so much. So did we cover all your information? Or no, I still got
just
to do
this
the
one.
2023 310, correct?
Correct.
All right, I checked that off too quick. So 2023 310, that's item number 11, page 31, MIS, State of Rhode Island Software and Services for Database Programming. Director.
Thank you. This request is to have a business partner come in, and they're going to do a study and develop a roadmap for us to migrate from our current situation where we have on-premise systems and services and lay out a roadmap of how do we migrate to cloud services and shared services outside of the city's infrastructure. I just thought, I discussed this, Councilman Lattiser had a question about it, Councilman Gebhardt and I discussed it, and I thought it was worth just mentioning to everyone that while this is a fairly low dollar amount to do the roadmap, it only looks at what we have, talks to us about best practices and where we can get some low-hanging fruit in the order we would attack this at. The different things that are going to come into this roadmap that we're going to want to execute are going to have a fairly significant price tag associated with them. And we've discussed this at budget time. I've discussed it with the city council and the administration at budget time for the last few years. We do not have a sufficient infrastructure. We don't spend the money on the sufficient infrastructure, which is a choice. And the choice is because best practices are leading us to, I think the phrase the councilman had lent me was an unfunded mandate. Software companies are moving to the point where they're saying, we only offer our software if you use it on our servers. SaaS is software as a service. Those SaaS models are more expensive. There are offsetting costs, which we are going to hopefully get out of this roadmap, but they're not going to be 100%. So I just wanted to bring it up that although this is a low dollar amount, relatively speaking, to get that roadmap, as we start to go through piece by piece and discuss it, there will be a number of projects that come out of it that are more costly.
So in summary, you're giving us a nice warning that we're about to have to fund an unfunded, tantamount to an unfunded mandate.
They're coming, yes.
They're coming, yes. Thank you. Are there any questions from members of this committee? Questions from members of the council? Questions from the public? You know what, maybe we'll create something. You just stay there for 1 minute. No. Thank you so much, Director. Thank you. Okay, I want to thank my colleagues for being patient. I'll go back to item number 7 now. That was requested by Councilman Foley. Bid 2025-016, Warwick Fire Department, promotional exams, page 18. You have, please identify, Councilman, you have the floor.
Good evening, Assistant Chief Alban Howard, Fire Department.
Thank you. My question is, do we currently have openings for these promotional exams?
So we do not currently have openings in most of the ranks. This is typically our promotional exams are 2-year lists. So every 2 years we have to redo the promotional exams, and this bid covers those promotional exams that happen every 2 years for all the ranks.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'm good.
Are there any questions from members of the committee? Questions from members of the council? Questions from members of the public? Thank you, Chief. Next would be item number 9. This is bid 2024-400, DPW traffic signs, channel ports, posts, materials. This is found on page 26. Christy, please identify. Councilman Lattiser, you have the floor.
Chris
Thank you.
Moretti, Public Works.
Christie, in this bid that you were looking for 18,000 for these fence posts and brackets, it brings me to the issue of the posts and brackets that Councilwoman Travis and I are being assessed for the signs that we have. And I had requested some information regarding this from the administration and didn't receive it. And also, in looking at the Munis report today, currently in this line item, you have $10,272 in that line item that's still available.
Correct.
In reviewing the items associated with the bids for those signs, what I found was the vendor that you approved, or we approved at your recommendation, department's recommendation, was not the same vendor as the first go-round of signs that we had. And if I understood it correctly, it was because the second vendor was cheaper. So the questions that I have is, were the other wards that received these signs, were they charged an additional roughly $900 per sign,
They
or I
were,
should say, for their appropriate bids.
they were charged for,
They were not.
yes, they were,
They were
yes.
in the original bid?
The bid for the pedestrian signals, the posts were part of that bid. The bid for, I believe, Councilman Gebhardt's solar signs, along with the one in your ward, the posts were in the bid. Or in the quote, I should say, because we did a 56.6 for all of this, for the solar speed signs. And then for yours and Councilwoman Travis's signs, the posts were not included in the quote. So we had to find a way to put them up, which is why there's an additional fee assessed.
They weren't
As you
included
say.
in the second quote,
No,
but yet they were included in the first quote.
they were.
So one of the questions I asked was, what was the amount that was charged for the signs to each respective ward on the first quote?
I don't have that
No,
information with me.
I didn't get that answer either, and that was a while ago when I asked the question. So, the new vendor that we went with for the signs, was that new vendor cheaper than the first vendor?
For the solar speed signs or
Yes.
the posts?
Yes,
Which one?
for the solar speed signs.
It was the exact same vendor.
It was the same vendor?
Yes.
So where was it that I saw a change in vendors?
Probably in the sign posts because we ordered them from a vendor
Mhm.
and they couldn't ship them to us in time. So we went to another vendor and secured them. And then all the posts were used for the various signs that needed to go up. So when yourself and Councilwoman Travis wanted additional solar speed signs, and there were 16 of them, I believe, 8 locations, 2 in each, 1 in each direction, so 2 per location, we had to order more. We didn't have any on hand to hang the signs up, and they weren't part of the quote for the signs that we purchased for yours and Councilwoman Travis's ward.
So why weren't we notified of that in the first place? Or even better question, why didn't you know it in the first place before that came to us for approval? We've already approved the signs for Councilwoman Travis's area and for my area. And those were approved with a certain amount. And now you're coming back. As a matter of fact, without our authorization, and Councilwoman Travis can correct me if I'm wrong, but without our authorization, I believe that the purchasing agent approved that money's 800 and some odd dollars to come out of our opera appropriations. So that's another question I'll have in a minute. But,
The signs need to be hung on something.
sorry?
The signs have to hang on something. We needed to purchase the poles. I will also let you know that I found them cheaper elsewhere, and we were able to pick them up. So instead of it being 900 and change per board, it was 800 and change per board. But yes, it's still part of your ARPA project for the signs. We have to hang them on something, and we
No,
had to purchase the poles.
I get it. I understand you have to hang them on something. I also understand that when somebody is getting a bid, that they should thoroughly review the bid to make sure everything is included, not to come back to us, sometime later and say, oh, by the way, they never included the poles or the brackets, but yet in the specs that I looked at, I saw brackets were included. So my question is, what brackets do they include?
That was a different purchase.
Different
Those
purchase.
purchases didn't have anything to do with the purchase that we made for wards 5 and 6. The quote that we received, that I wrote a 5664 for wards 5 and 6, and it was an oversight on our part, did not include the poles on the quote. Had the poles been included, you would still be paying for them out of your ARPA funds.
So again, I am requesting to get the amounts that were approved by the council for the first batch of signs versus the signs that Councilwoman Travis and I are being charged for extra. And by the way, as I said, I'm still waiting for an explanation, and I'll give you no, actually, it'd probably be better off for the purchasing agent to address this, is where did she get the authority to approve those signs coming out of our APRA funds? We didn't, Councilwoman Travis, did you? approve that?
So, Councilman, if I may redirect, I understand you have concerns. I would encourage you to call the mayor's office and make the appointment, but we're speaking about this specific bid, and I'm afraid that we're kind of getting off topic of this bid.
Okay, I don't disagree with you, Mr. Chairman, but if you heard my comments in the first place, I've already made that request for that information.
I understand.
And haven't received it. As a matter of fact, that request was sent through the council liaison's office, and I have not seen the response to it. So you tell me, make the calls. Okay, we make the calls, we make the emails, then I expect to get answers. So anyways, back to the item.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I have the floor.
You-
The chief of staff shouldn't not be just stepping up to the podium, interrupting me.
Well, you're yelling at me, and I haven't even had a chance to respond to what the chief requested. So I do agree with the councilman. He said he was going to move on. After all is said and done, I'll welcome a response since the question was asked and you want to make a statement. That'll be left up to you, Councilman. You still have the floor.
So apparently, I'm not going to get that answer right now as to why Councilwoman Travis and I are being charged, other than the administration went to a different bidder and then found out later that, oh, by the way, we don't have the fence posts and we don't have the brackets. So we just pass it on. But the other concern is that the $882 from Councilwoman Travis's as well as mine, opera funds, have been deducted. And we were sent an email asking if we approved it. I never responded to approve it because I was asking questions first, but it was just done. So make up the rules as you go along. Is that what we got going on here? Thank you. Maybe I'll get an answer on that.
Thank you, Councilman. Chief, do you wish to respond to any of the comments that were made?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, just a general comment. It was noted that communication was sent to our office and no response was given. I would just reject that characterization. The director and myself went back and forth on a few emails with the council member. We had a follow-up phone conversation with the legislative director about the issue and indicated that if any of the responses were inadequate, to please reach out and let us know. So I would just reject the categorization that no response was given. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any? Councilman.
So I think the chief of staff just said that a phone call was made to me. I didn't get no phone call.
This sounds like something, again, I would ask that once we know this bid, I highly recommend that there be a conference.
I didn't receive any phone call.
Understood.
From DPW or from the chief of staff.
Okay. Are there any questions, other questions pertaining to this bid from members of the council? Are there any questions from members pertaining to this bid from members of the public? Thank you. May I have a motion?
Move favorable action on the bid package.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. The time is now 5:36 and the Warwick Finance Committee is closed.
The next committee to meet is intergovernmental, and that can start at 6:20. So we will see you back here at 6:20.
It is now 6:20 and the Intergovernmental Committee is now in session. The first order of business is the acceptance of minutes from the committee meeting held on April 1st, 2024. Do I have a motion?
Move favorable action.
All in favor?
Aye.
The first item on the calendar is PCR 20-24, a resolution request on the General Assembly to enact legislation exempting from taxation the real property and tangible personal property of the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Councilman Sinapi?
So I'm going to have an amendment for this. The solicitor is working on the language. It's due to the unique nature of the way their lease operates. So we've already talked about this for weeks. We have the fiscal note. My request would be to put it to the full council, even if the vote's not favor up or down, just get it to the full council for discussion. We can get the amendment there, and then we can discuss it in full at that time.
Okay. Okay. Do we have a motion to move it to the council?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well, the solicitor, can we do it that way, or does it need to go to the full council and then the public?
You're able to move it to the full council with the understanding that pursuant to the rules, we would be entertaining the public comment and testimony at the time of any amendment potentially moving forward.
Perfect.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, Councilman.
So as of today, I still do not have a fiscal note other than what was texted to me at the previous meeting. I don't know about the rest of you, but I haven't received a fiscal note from the administration. And the fiscal note, as you know, is supposed to be presented to us 7 days before the meeting. And that has not happened. So I don't know why, but it hasn't. As a matter of fact, at the previous meeting, and I reviewed the tape today, this morning, actually, and the chief of staff got to the podium and said that the fiscal note was BCC'd to the council, which was somewhere around 5 o'clock or 4:30, whatever it was. I never received a BCC on any fiscal note. So here we are again, where we don't have a fiscal note, either from the finance director or, as been indicated, from the director of assessment. So that's my point. How can we
Okay.
proceed with something when we do not have a fiscal note?
Okay. Chief?
Yes, Chairman, as I indicated and as the councilman mentioned at the last council meeting, the director of assessing did send out that document on the day of the previous council meeting. Solicitor, I'm not sure of the exact date of it, but he had BCC'd it to all members of the council. That's my understanding.
And who was it sent to? Because I didn't receive it. Did any other member of the council, other than Councilman Sinapi, receive it? Councilwoman Travis just stated she never received it. Mr. President, did you receive it?
I do not know if I received it. I believe, I knew that there was one that came in around 4 o'clock of the council meeting, but I did not review it.
We
so.
never,
Correct.
it was never sent to us. Madam Clerk, did you receive any fiscal note for this meeting this evening? Or any other communication?
I have
this
not
today?
received a fiscal note for this.
You didn't
no.
receive anything
No,
either?
sir.
Pardon me, Solicitor Walsh, if it would be appropriate, the Director of Assessing and I are happy to leave the chamber, go check the record and do our best to
Sir,
get that for you.
That doesn't work. The fiscal note is very clear in the rules. It needs to be presented 7 days prior to the council meeting. This is something that you should be well aware of.
As a point of
Well,
order, it's not 7 days prior to the council meeting for the whole council. It's just the finance committee. So the question isn't, did the whole council receive it? The question is, did the finance committee receive it?
Well, how about both? Because I didn't receive it.
Again,
And I'm the
according
one that
to
requested
section 30-7 of the ordinances, the requirement is that the finance committee, the city council receives it 7 days before. And as far as whether or not you received it 7 days before, you did, because I gave it to you. So that's not really a question.
No, you did not. You texted it to me at 6:20 or so the night of that meeting.
How long
I
ago
have-
was that
I have
meeting?
not, and now,
How long ago was that meeting?
2 weeks.
Okay,
You-
thank you.
you text-
So the
excuse me.
remaining question is whether or not the finance committee received it 7 days prior to the meeting or not.
And
Not a
you already
question of
heard
whether or
one
not
other
someone
member
else did.
of the council did not receive it. And now you're referring to something else that the finance committee received earlier today that we are not privy to, the rest of the council. We don't have any such information. So how is it that this stuff is just being done without inclusion of the entire city council? But yet people are asking us or expecting us to vote on something tonight that we haven't even seen.
Chairman,
Yes.
Council, thank you. For the record, I, as the finance chair, this is Councilman Howe, Finance Committee Chairman, on April 1st, 2024 at 4:03 PM, I received the fiscal note pertaining to PCR 2024. So going on just what Councilman, I am not debating what I'm just acknowledging from what the councilman said, that it was received. I received that fiscal note on April 1st.
So
All right,
thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. So that is more than 7 days before this meeting.
I received it on April 1st.
Correct.
Yes,
But it
sir.
was never disseminated to the rest of the council.
Yes.
None of us, the rest of us
Hold on a
didn't
minute,
see it.
please. Councilman Foley?
I believe we've made a motion. It's been seconded to move this to the full council for discussion. Therefore, this discussion is out of order, I believe. Solicitor?
A point of order was being addressed. It would be appropriate to continue this, the vote uninterrupted. The full item and the concerns that you have will be addressed before any action by the full council.
Fine.
So therefore, we take a vote on the motion to move to the full floor, correct?
It's in order for you to do so.
He said yes.
Okay, we have a motion to move it to the full floor. I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
The second item on the calendar is PCR 25-24, a resolution requesting the General Assembly to review and consider adopting provisions of the Keeping Children Safe from Family Violence Act, also known as Caden's Law. Councilman Sinapi?
So this is similar in scope to Councilman Lattis's resolution on election security, as far as we're not trying to browbeat the General Assembly into anything. We're not demanding they do anything. We're just asking that they look into the prospect of enacting what's widely known as Caden's Law. A brief summary is that there is federal funds available for the training and implementation of helping the family court system deal with particular kinds of issues. For those who don't practice family court or aren't attorneys, the Rhode Island family court system is, we'll put it the gentle way, not great. And it's not, I'm not saying it's anyone in particular's fault. It's been a system that's been around for a while, like everything else. It needs improvements. And this is a great way to do it without having to kind of crunch the numbers and panic and figure out where funds come from, because the federal government's willing to do it. They're willing to do it for multiple years. And by the time the funding runs out, you can have already basically put together what you need to training-wise by those first several years, basically a capital investment, so that you don't have to keep expending funds on it. And the goal is to basically prevent what happened in Warwick not too long ago, the tragedy where the child was killed and the father took his own life. The goal is to prevent that situation, among others, from being possible by basically making sure the judges and staff are educated on the topic and have the tools they need to be able to make the right decisions, as opposed to just expecting them to figure out things that normal people, including judges, I mean, it's not a fair ask under normal circumstances, frankly. So this helps them get the knowledge and understanding they need to do what they need to do and to prevent the tragedies like the one that happened earlier in Warwick. And again, it's very gentle as far as the request. I did it that way on purpose because the General Assembly might do their own swing on it. They might also opt out altogether and not want to do it at all. So this is at least gets it on their radar as something that they should be cognizant of. That way we hopefully get in before the federal funds stop being an option.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? From the council, first one, come in. Jeremy?
Thank you. If I may direct a question through the chair to Councilman Sinapi. The federal funds, is that strictly for the purpose of training for the judge and for the judiciary staff, or are there any other federal funds that may be available?
I'd have to look into it to get refreshed on it because this was a while ago when I looked into it. My vague understanding was the funds were to help for establishment and implementation of the law and everything required for it. So whether it be support staff or judges, et cetera.
Thank you. I'll just make a brief statement that this tends to be one of those areas where I think that we are all, of course, in support of this cause and this outcome. It's also a little bit difficult for me as a councilman to weigh in on this particular law because it is a very complicated area when it comes to judges' discretion as to placement, custody, and it's something that we are not having a direct vote upon in terms of any ordinances here in Warwick, but rather it's a resolution to the General Assembly. And over the last few years, it's been more typical that the City Council does not necessarily weigh in on generally applicable laws, although certainly exceptions have been made, and I've advocated for some exceptions to that myself. It is something where I would like to hear a little bit more about this as well. Again, it's absolutely a cause that I support. We need to make sure to do whatever we can be doing to prevent domestic violence. And it's also, of course, a very delicate issue too, because I think that in a lot of people's experiences, judges naturally tend to have a certain inclination towards trying to prevent dangerous situations from occurring in the first place, and sometimes that results in judges using their discretion in terms of placement or barring one family member or another family member from seeing a child when there are circumstances where it is just a matter of allegations. It is something where we place a lot of trust into the hands of judges to make the right call. It's humbling to have that realization that, yeah, judges, they are human beings after all, and sometimes they're going to get it wrong. And since I don't practice family law, I know enough that I know how complicated this area of the law is. So I would like to hear a little bit more from members of the council, members of the public before I make up my mind as to which way is most appropriate to vote on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions or comments? Councilman Lattiser.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Um, I also find this resolution to be very interesting. And through the chair to Councilman Sinapi, would you be able to provide us with any more specific occurrences or information that led you to drafting this in the first place? I think that there's a much deeper message here in this legislation, and if there is, I'd like to hear it. I think this is a really important step that you're taking, but I'd like to hear a little deeper.
Sure. So this was first pointed out to me by a constituent who has and continues to endure the family court system. I don't talk about it much, but I am involved in the family court system both personally and to a degree professionally, although thankfully a very limited degree. My own experience with it is of not really anything positive, unfortunately, and that's not due to any fault of anyone employed there, frankly. It's just the nature of how the system works and its current form. The largest problem being that as Jeremy knows and has seen, judges often have a massive caseload normally. In family court, it's not much different. In fact, sometimes it's worse. And on top of that, the issues in family court all are far more difficult usually, from the mundane to the less so. So the point of Caden's law, among other things, just to kind of help bring some sort of balance to it and to help educate them. So there's four main things it goes for: restricting expert testimony for only those who are qualified to provide it, because otherwise you'll have people walking into family court touting that they know best and here's why, but they're not actually qualified in any size, shape, or form to be weighing in on a child's well-being. I mean, we all know from experience, there's pediatricians, there's specialists. Pediatricians are for kids. Other doctors are for other people. It's usually very clear delineation, and there's a reason for that. They're different. Limiting the use of reunification camps and therapies which cannot be proven safe and effective. Providing evidence-based ongoing training to judges and court personnel on family violence subject matter. So that's the big one that I'm most interested in, because that, coupled with the last one of requiring the family courts to consider the existence of protection from abuse orders when making custody decisions, are the most important, because you shouldn't have a situation where there's a child actively being abused and there's a court order on it, and yet that parent who's actively abusing them has unsupervised custody rights because the court wasn't made aware of it properly, or just it wasn't obvious to them for whatever reason. And then you have a situation where the abuser decides to either continue their abuse and takes it too far, or escalate it intentionally. Like we had more recently, where the person was an abuser and decided to take it to another level. And for those who don't know, when that happened, my son's school got locked down too, because they, at the time, didn't know where that individual was, because there was a sibling in that school area. So there was a active possibility that the shooter was going to go to my kid's school or the school next door. So this was very much a real and present threat to a lot of parents and their kids, in my ward in particular, but the city as a whole. Some of this stuff is it should be already part of it. Like, judges should be provided the training in the first place. They should be provided the support they need and their personnel as well. So, and from that perspective, it's kind of an easy win where it helps everybody get what they need. And states are increasingly seeing that. We got Pennsylvania, New York, California, Colorado, Maryland, Montana, Illinois, And looks like some more too all have enacted this. It's likely going to happen here one way or another. It's just a matter of time, and I'd rather we get behind it sooner rather than later so that nothing else happens. The sooner it can get on the General Assembly's radar, the better.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, go ahead, please.
So, Councilman Sinapi, is it fair to assume that right now there is nothing that's taking place with item number 4?
As far as the
Family courts consider I'm sorry, no, that wasn't the one. Item number 3.
providing evidence-based training. So I could be mistaken, but my understanding is the training that they're required to have is limited, if any, as far as what they're required to do. In fact, I suspect the General Assembly will even have a difficult time making anything required for the judiciary. But my take on it is if someone wants to be a family court judge, as opposed to elsewhere, there's another level of responsibility there where this kind of training is kind of critical. And it's not like you can't, ultimately the whole point is that it's not so that you can't be a judge if you don't do it, it's that you're not supposed to hear a case that involves this sort of issue, because there's plenty of family court matters that don't involve kids, frankly. It's absolutely the case. But there's also plenty that do, and there's also plenty that involve abuse. And there's no reason not to actually make sure they're trained how to deal with it. And frankly, it already should be a thing. I don't know why it's not. And try not to think about it because it seems like a given that it should be required and it should be this thorough and address all these topics.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Chairman.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Any other questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Move favorable action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It is now 6:43 and the Intergovernmental Committee is adjourned.
Next committee is Public Properties, and that can begin at this time. Thank you.
The time is 6:44. The City Council Committee on Public Properties, Land Use, and Community Affairs opens for business. First up, we have acceptance of the minutes dated April 1, 2024. Do we have a motion?
Move favorable action.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have one item on the agenda. This is Councilman Sinapi. PCR-131-23, a resolution dedicating Barton Farm as a municipal trust, as a municipal public trust pursuant to RI General Laws 45-36.1-1 et sec, and as having conservation restrictions pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws Section 34-39-1 et sec. This is Assessor's Plat 251, Lot 179, commonly known by the address of 1351 Centerville Road. Councilman Sinapi? June 17? Okay, we have a request from the sponsor to hold to June 17th. Do we have a motion?
Move to hold.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Held to June 17th. The City Council Committee on Public Properties, Land Use, and Community Affairs adjourns at 6:46 PM.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will start the full council meeting at 7 PM. There is public comment, and if you would like to sign up to be heard this evening, there should be a sign-up sheet on the podium, and we will see you back here at 7 o'clock. Good evening, everyone. I call the April 22nd, 2024 City Council meeting to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. McAllister?
Here.
Mr. Foley? Mr. Gephardt?
Here.
Mr. Howe?
Here.
Mr. Lattiser? Mr. McElroy?
Here.
Mr. Ricks?
Here.
Mr. Snappy? Here. Ms. Travis?
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. Councilman Lattiser, will you please introduce our guests that are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the distinct honor and pleasure of introducing our scouts from Boy Scouts of America. Troop Pack 1 is here with us this evening, and they will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would all come to the podium. And whenever you're ready, circle around that microphone, and you can lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose bright stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you. If there's no objections from members of the council, I'd like to go right to number 2, introduction and recognition of the Boy Scout Troop 1 of Warwick. Any objections? Hearing none. Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. City Sergeant, would you please open up the ropes, if you will, to allow our scouts to come through? Scouts, would you come forward, please? Scout leaders, Miss Patty Gom, Mr. Martin Gom. I believe we have 5 scouts that are getting presentations this evening. Sir. Don't kid yourself. They do that on purpose to me. They mute that mic all the time. I'm only kidding. So who we missing? Sorry?
Salvador.
Okay. Come on, help me. Okay. So we have one scout that's on their way. And this is really a milestone for you youngsters. You know, scouts are part of the fabric of our country. A very important part of what we do and what we accomplish, you know, as a society and as a nation. And your dedication to doing the things that you do as a scout, I'll tell you, very impressive. Your professionalism, the patience that you exert, the determination that you always display, being at all the scout meetings and doing the different things and activities that you need. It's really commendable. It's also commendable for your troop leaders as well, because they kind of keep you all in line, right? Make sure that you're where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be, and do what you're supposed to do. But it's also very important for your family, for your moms, your dads, your grandparents, your brothers, your sisters, because what you do oftentimes has to happen because of them and the sacrifices that they have to make for you folks to do what you do. So it's really impressive, and I'm really proud to have you here. I must again, I know I spoke to you out in the hall. I publicly apologize for having a family commitment and not being able to attend your ceremony. I always find that really, really exciting to do that. And we're all very proud of you. Everyone in this council chamber is proud of you, as is all of my colleagues on the city council and the mayor of the city of Warwick. So I have these for you. When you get as old as me, you need these things right here because I can't see without them. So we have a resolution of congratulations, and it states, resolved that where the Boy Scouts of America is a vital force in the development of our youth through its many programs, which encourage the ability of its members to do things for themselves and for others. And whereas one of the major objectives in the scouting program is to develop citizenship through community involvement. And in addition to working for citizens merit badges, scouts are encouraged to participate in community service projects. And whereas Gabby Bastolis, Dorich Fairbairn Summers, Salvatore Pellerano, Andy Cronin, and Exale Johnson is a member, Zyla is a member of PAC 1 Warwick and has not only proven herself to be an outstanding member of the Boy Scouts of America, but has attained the highest honor bestowed on a Cub Scout, the Arrow of Light Award. You will all cross over to Troop 77 Buttonwoods, which you have done. Troop 7 Buttonwoods. That's why I have Miss Patty here to correct me on these things. It's a good thing I have her here, huh? Yeah. The first chartered all-female Scouts troop, and whereas the mayor and the Warwick City Council appreciates and recognizes the activities and contributions made to this community by all of you, and whereas we therefore recognize all of you as worthy of this highest honor and encourage you all to continue your commitment to excellence. Now therefore it be resolved, the mayor and the Warwick City Council wish to congratulate all of you Scouts for this outstanding accomplishment and extending to you all our deepest appreciation for all of your dedicated work and wishing you all the best in your future endeavors. The city clerk is hereby directed to forward a copy of this to each and every one of you. And there is also, I was just introduced to another young lady who is about to attain, in my opinion, an extraordinary accomplishment. And that young lady's name is? Her name is?
Irene Fairbanks.
Okay. Irene? Iris. This young lady is in the very near future about to become an Eagle Scout. And that's what you all have to look forward to as well. Great job. We're very proud of you, very proud of all of you. And congratulations. Congratulations. Let's pass these out. Congratulations. Good job. I remember. See, I'm trainable, right? Thank you all. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, you sure you want me to continue using your mic?
Yeah.
It could be
Thank you.
troublesome. Could get you in trouble.
We're on general communications. This is the announcements of congratulations, condolences, or community events. I'd like to share a letter that Governor McKee sent to the Warwick City Council, thanking us and congratulating the city of Warwick for participating in the Litter-Free Rhode Island program. So the governor thanked us and is proud that we are participating in this. Today is Earth Day, and I know that a number of us participated in Earth Day cleanups this past weekend. I know that there was cleanups in Arnold's Neck, at Gorton's Pond, Patuxent Village, the Patuxent River Association did one. There was one in City Park, Coesit, they had one, Conimicut had one. I'm sure there was more as well. It's really important, and I'm glad the scouts are here to just get out and take care of our environment. I know we did one at Gordon's Pond right down the street here, and for about 2 hours we about had 10, 15 people here, and it was unbelievable the amount of trash that we picked up. It's really sad. Right around the water, they stocked it with fish this year, and there's turtles in there and everything like that. So we cleaned it up. So I just want to thank everyone who participated in that. And then I also have one more announcement, is that the city will be having budget hearings on Monday, May 20th. So schedule for Monday, May 20th will be the budget hearings. We ask that all department directors be here on Monday, May 20th. If not, if they're unavailable, please speak to the administration who can present your budget at that time. Are there any other council members that have any announcements of congratulations, condolences, or community events?
Mr. President?
Yes.
So the young scout that wasn't here a moment ago just came in. May I present that?
Sure.
Come on down. You get to hang out with me all by yourself. Is that good? Good thing. Okay, so because your colleagues have heard this, you're going to have to hear it again. It says, whereas the Boy Scouts of America is a vital force in the development of our youth through its many programs which encourage the ability of its members to do things for themselves and especially for others. And whereas one of the major objectives in the scouting program is to develop citizenship through community involvement. And in addition to working for citizenship merit badges, scouts are encouraged to participate in community service projects. And whereas Salvatore Pellerano is a member of PAC 1 Warwick and has not only proven himself to be an outstanding member of the Boy Scouts of America, but has attained the highest honor bestowed on a Cub Scout, the Arrow of Light Award. And whereas the mayor of the city of Warwick and the Warwick City Council appreciates and recognizes the activities and contributions made to this community by you. And whereas We therefore recognize Salvatore as worthy of this highest honor and encourage him to continue his commitment to excellence. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the mayor and the city of Warwick wish to congratulate Salvatore Pellerano for this outstanding accomplishment and extend to you our deepest appreciation for all this dedicated hard work and wish you the best in all your future endeavors. You've done a great job. You've worked hard. You've accomplished a great milestone, and we're really proud of you, man. Congratulations. Here you go. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I told you the last time that I was going to give you an update from the karate tournament that we had here in Warwick. And just the Crown Plaza alone, we had 522 rooms that were booked, and we used 7 other hotels, so we went way over 1,000 rooms. Okay, and the fact was that for the 3 days, we believe from the count we had that we had over 4,000 people go through. So that's a lot of people in Warwick spending money and get, hotels and restaurants and gas. So we did a good, it was booked. So we had one team from New York had 50 people. 25 could only get booked in the Crown Plaza. The other 25 had to find the other hotels. So we had a good turnout, and I just think that was a big plus for Warwick. Thank you.
Absolutely. Councilman Gephardt.
On a more somber note, I just asked for a moment of silence for Craig Garrett. He passed away on April 4th. Craig was only 48 years old, but he had battled cancer for some amount of time. He's a graduate of Pilgrim. He was a state champion wrestler. He also served honorably in the U.S. Air Force. So for Craig and his family, a moment of silence, if you would.
Absolutely. We'll have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Councilman Lattiser.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I also am going to request a moment of silence for not only a good friend of mine, but I believe a friend of many of you here on the city council and in city government over the years, Mr. Pete Fontaine. Pete was a reporter with the Warwick Beacon, also did the Johnston papers, was just extremely active. Pete was, as it was described, a cantankerous individual. He loved reporting. He loved his job. And I'll always remember the first time I met Pete Fontaine. I was knocking on doors in 2012. I was right near Samuel Gorton Avenue. No, it's not true. It was before it, just coming up Warwick Neck Avenue. And I'm walking out to the street. He stops his car, convertible, in the middle of the road, and he hollers out, "Are you Lattiser?" I says, "I am." He says, "I want to talk to you." Floors it, pulls into the street, which was one way, in the wrong way, jumps out of his car in the middle of the road and just starts having this conversation. Pete was truly a good friend, and he was just a very good reporter. So if we could have a moment of silence, please.
Absolutely. We'll have a moment of silence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Travis.
I wasn't sure who was going to do a moment of silence for Howard Fleming, who was very active with the Greenwood Fire Company. He always selling tickets. He was a character. He belonged to a lot of groups. He was with the FOPA, but he passed away recently.
Thank you. We'll have a moment of silence. Thank you. Anything else under general communications from members of the council? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to executive communications. There are none. A is the acceptance of the minutes from the council meeting held on April 1st. Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next is the acceptance of the minutes for April 11th. Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
And we have one will abstain. Thank you. Up next is public comment. So this is last call on public comment. We have a sign-up sheet here on the podium. If anybody would like to be heard at this time, just flag it down. Last call. Okay. Public comment. Rule 41. After general communications and prior to the consent calendar, at the last regular scheduled meeting of the city council each month, there shall be a period of time not to exceed 30 minutes, during which citizens may comment about Warwick City issues subject to the following stipulations. The total period of time for a public comment shall not exceed 30 minutes. Comments need to be brief in order to allow as many citizens as possible to participate. Each citizen signed up and present shall have not to exceed 5 minutes to speak, provided, however, that if more than 6 citizens are signed up and present, the 30 minutes will be split evenly amongst speakers. Time shall not be transferable among speakers. The topics for comment shall be issues directly affecting city government. City council members will not respond to questions during public comment period. The public comment session will terminate at the expiration of the earlier of all the speakers concluding their allotted time or 30 minutes. Waiver of this provision requires a unanimous vote of the council. So we have 2 individuals that have signed up. The first individual is Marjorie. If you just come up to the mic, the Sergeant of Arms will turn it on for you, and just please introduce yourself for the record.
And my name is Marjorie O'Hara. I live at 61 Post Road on the Patuxent River, 6 houses out of Patuxent Village. And my concern is the Patuxent River Trail and a fence that DEM has said they can proceed with. I represent Patuxent Green Revival, 1,100 people who are against this. We have a big community. We're working hard. The area where they want to put that fence is exactly a deer crossing, has been a deer crossing for at least 40 to 50 years. I've lived there all my life. My grandparents lived there. I've owned 6 houses on the Warwick side of Patuxent. And I worked at Kent delivering babies for you people for 30 years. And then as a flight attendant for Southwest for 18. I finally got off the plane before I died on it. Anyway, that being said, I am Warwick. I am Warwick. Went to Warwick schools, went to Bayview, and then Warwick Vets and Pilgrim. And I am well opposed. That's a deer crossing. The turkeys cross the road right there, and it will be a disaster if a deer tries to jump over the fence. He'll end up in someone's windshield. And I just want to commend all the Boy Scouts, because when I was 14, I was walking the Patuxent River Trail. And at that time, the 2 streams had no bridge. Thanks to the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, they built those bridges. And the current owner has chopped them down and refuses us to walk our trail. I've walked that since I was 14, and I will be 79 shortly. I just want you to know that we object. Patuxent Green Revival. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Bill Kay.
Good evening. My name is Bill King. I'm a resident and owner of one of the condominiums at 200 Post Road, which is approximately 150 units in there. And it's diagonally across from the property at 175 Post Road where the discussion of the fence has been talked about. I just wanted to quickly express my concern and disappointment for the approval of the Rhode Island DEM of a security fence proposed by the owners of that property there, which I believe will now move forward for final approval. I understand the desire for the security fencing, for a proposed business, which is apparently up and running now. But the decision to approve the extensive amount of fence to go along Post Road and up the sides of the property just seemed problematic to me. The proposed chain link fence will in effect form a closed-ended trap for any wildlife coming off of the river and using the crossing from the Pawtucket Riverside up through the southern part where Post Road, across Post Road into the woods on that other side. As Marjorie said, deer, wild turkeys, coyotes, smaller species travel from Pawtucket River across these wetlands and the woods on that property over to the woods on the southern side where our condos are up against. I worry that the outside of the fence also will be a problem and that they won't be able to get through. They've been regularly using this daily, most of this different wildlife. They definitely would present a danger to themselves and to motorists being stuck outside this extensive fence. They're not all small animals. The fence will also apparently somehow cross a stream that flows from the south side of Post Road under the street into 195 and blocks that off and empties into the Pawtucket River. It also apparently will split or bifurcate the wetland area that's on the eastern side of the property and shut off the walking trailhead that Marge talks about that starts at Post Road and has been there for much of years. I understand it's the owner's property, but the level of fencing is unnecessary for what they're doing for the business as far as covering the whole property area. The last thing I wanted to talk about was it just doesn't seem like this is a logical solution for the security needs of the business, where a smaller enclosure around the actual truck park would certainly serve the purpose. I understand people's property rights, but it also seems to me that the neighborhood and the wildlife deserve some say in keeping the environment safer and more open and useful for those local inhabitants there. We've worked hard as a community and a state to clean up the Pawtucket and the river and the surrounding areas so it can be of benefit to everyone and not a potential danger. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Next up is on the agenda is number 1, consent calendar, PCR 35-24, resolution relative to bids, committee report, finance.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley. Go ahead, Councilman Howe.
PCR 35-24, bid 2025-001, bid 2025-017, bid 2025-024. Bid 2025-025, 2025-021, 2025-018, 2025-016, 2024-051, 2024-400, 2024399, 2023-310, 2025-009, 2024-441, 2025-027, 2024-397, 2024-442, 2025-03, correction, 2025-013, 2025-014, 2025-022, 2024-443, 2024-440, 2024-436. That concludes the consent calendar, Mr. President.
Thank you. And just for everyone who's here, so earlier this evening at 5 o'clock, we had a finance committee, which each one of those that the councilman read off is a bid that we discussed. We had the administration here, the directors here, public comment. So those, he's listing the numbers, but that's what those numbers are. They're related to bids that we discussed earlier this evening in the finance committee. So are there any questions from members of the council that was not asked earlier this evening in the finance committee? Hearing none, the clerk will call a roll for favorable action.
McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi? Yes. Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes, consent passes.
Thank you. Consent passes. And there was no items that were taken off the consent.
Yes, Mr. President, no
calendar.
items.
Okay. So we are now moving to the unfinished business section on the agenda this evening. First up is PCR 131-23, Committee Report, Public Properties.
Recommend hold to June 17th.
Hold to June 17th. Hearing no objection from members of the council, the administration is getting us some information on PCR 20-24, which is next up. They're not back yet. So if there's no objection, I'd like to continue on to the agenda and move on to new business to give them an opportunity to get that information. Any objection? Okay. Number one this evening, now we're moving to new business, which is PCR 25-24. Committee report, intergovernmental.
Favorable action, Mr. President.
For action, Councilman Sinapi. Second by Councilwoman Travis, Councilman Lattiser, Councilman Gephardt, Councilman McElroy, and Councilman Howe. Any questions or comments? Councilman Howe.
Mr. President, may I request from the sponsor to be added as a co-sponsor?
Mr. Sinapi's giving the thumbs up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Travis. Councilman Lattiser would like to be added. So would Councilwoman Travis, Councilman Gephardt, Councilman Foley, Councilman McElroy, and myself, please. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, the clerk will call a roll for favorable action. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi? Ms. Travis? Yes. 9 yes, motion passes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next up is a referral and advertising is PCO 3-24 in order of abatement of a portion of Lakedale Drive, and also PCO 4-24, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinances of the City of Warwick, 1009 Centerville. We're now moving on to unanimous consent. First up is PCR 36-24, a resolution requesting the General Assembly appropriate funds to the City of Warwick as compensatory for municipal services provided at the Rhode Island T.F. Green International Airport. So a couple procedural things here. The first is there any objections of hearing this item under unanimous consent at this time by members of the council? Okay, hearing none, we will now hear PCR 36-24. Myself and Councilman Howe are the sponsors of this. I just give it a little background and ask Councilman Howe if he has anything to add. As we're all aware here on the council, the FAA has decided that they are no longer going to be sending the City of Warwick payment in lieu of taxes, a kind of agreement that we've had for a number of years of $500,000. So there is a state law that says in the case that the FAA ever did change their mind, the state would come up and make the City of Warwick whole with that $500,000. So thankfully, the Speaker of the House, Joseph Carsey, and the entire Warwick delegation in the House is sponsoring a bill that will be heard at the State House tomorrow and the Finance Committee at their Finance Committee. And they are asking for a resolution of support from the City Council for this legislation. Everybody that lives here in Warwick knows the impact that the airport has in our city. We are the first responders. Anything that happens at the airport, it is Warwick Police, Warwick Fire, Warwick Services that are there, whether it's the President of the United States coming, whether it's the Patriots or the team that they're playing, or Taylor Swift. It's, and God forbid that there's an emergency there or anything like that, is the City of Warwick that that provides that service to the airport. So in my opinion, this is, it's very disappointing the FAA is not doing it, but the speaker has stepped up here to make sure that we're going to get that. So I ask for your support on this, and Councilman Howe, the airport is in your ward, and you are the sponsor on this as well. So I want to give you first opportunity to be heard.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I just want to state my we all know my frustration with how federal government to state government to municipal government, there seems to be just such a disconnect. And this is a great example of that. I thank you, Mr. President, for identifying that we send all our services to the airport, because the airport does have a fire service, but the fire service handles the situation on the runways and only the runways. When someone slips and falls, we send our rescue services. When someone acts up, we send our police to help escort or the state police fill in as well at that federally mandated airport. When there is something that happens in the parking lot, it is our fire department, our police department that respond. Not to mention the accommodations that our city makes to accommodate a growing corporate entity that takes up a big chunk of our city. So for the FAA to say, we've just decided to drop this $500,000 a year funding and plop it into the lap of the state is confusing, it's disingenuous, and quite honestly frustrating. We are doing everything we can to be good neighbors, and I think the airport has definitely, my relationship with the airport, in spite of the growing, we have open communication. This was just like a sock in the gut, if you will, a good punch in the gut. For them just to suddenly say, no, the FAA to say this. For the federal government, which gets, by the way, can derive all this money from the revenue that they take in from all the international airports, $500,000 to use, the term pennies in the bucket, and for them to take that away from us here in the city is extremely unfortunate and just frustrating. So I do thank my colleagues. I want to thank, first of all, Speaker of the House, Joe Sicarci, and the House of Representatives for finding a way. They are mandated to do so, but they didn't turn on it. I appreciate that they're taking this responsibility as they shouldn't. The state taxes are paid by us, so we had to give it to the state, and the FAA said, oh, well, now you have to request it to get it back, which makes no sense to me. So I do ask my colleagues to support this until we come up with a plan, and I do plan on finding out and getting some official documentation and work with the administration on how much the city does put out, and I do plan on docketing something to the General Assembly to go to our federal delegation to request the pilot money be returned and also request that it becomes permanent. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Howe, and maybe ask for a bump as well when you're drafting it. Councilman Ricks.
First, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you.
And second, I'd just like to join my colleagues. This is absolutely outrageous that the airport isn't paying or is refusing to pay any share here. The $500,000 is a drop in the bucket compared to what we all know are the real costs of city services to this airport. We're not even looking at all of the lost property taxes, all of the property devaluation of the land surrounding the airport. Just the municipal services to that airport alone, we might not have the precise number right here, right now, but we all know that it is well in excess of $500,000. And for them to start refusing to pay that paltry amount, paltry for this massive multi-million-dollar facility that pays its officers, directors, and high-ranking executives, pays them very well. For them to be thinking that the city of Warwick should be heavily subsidizing them after everything that the airport has done and inflicted upon us here at the city, it is absolutely outrageous. And it makes me start to wonder, maybe if the airport doesn't want to be a good neighbor, maybe if they don't want to be part of the city and contribute, maybe we should be looking into some of our other options here. That's all.
Any other additional questions or comments on this, members of the council? Councilman Lattiser.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with everything that everyone said. And I'll just remind you, going to some of the comments from both Councilman Howe and Councilman Ricks, of the costs associated to servicing that. It wasn't that long ago, we had to spend $35K on repairing a fire truck that had an accident responding to an event at the airport. And I think this is, at least it's the beginning anyways. Thank you.
Thank you. As this was docket under unanimous consent, it was not heard in committee earlier this evening. So I do want to give members of the public an opportunity to be heard on this. If there's anyone here that would like to be heard on this, just please come up to the microphone here, and the Sergeant at Arms will turn it on for you, and just identify yourself, please.
Good evening. And Jim Italiani, Oakland Beach Heights. The airport has done us all a lot of good also, and we know that. But the one thing that is dear to my heart, and I'm sure it is to all of ours too, but particularly in the last, let's say, 5 years, the maintenance, the property values, the lack of maintenance of the properties around the airport, and for the whole city for that matter. But now we may get some money coming in, back in from the airport. Let's try to clean up that area. I mean, I've flown into a number of third world airports that look a lot better outside, I'm talking about, than our airport does. And we got this big, beautiful, super expensive new sign, and you walk out and there's garbage all over the place and there's weeds all over the place. Let's try to correct that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to be heard on PCR 36-24, members of the public? Okay. Hearing none, do we have a motion? Councilman Howe, would you like to move a motion?
Thank you, Mr. President. I respectfully and eagerly move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley, Councilman Ricks, Councilman McElroy, Councilman Gephardt, Councilwoman Travis, and Councilman Lattiser. Any other additional questions or comments? Hearing none, the clerk will call a roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt? Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser? Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi? Ms. Travis? 9 yes, motion passes.
Thank you. Motion passes, and I will bring the signed, when the mayor signs it tomorrow, I'll bring it to the State House for the committee. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, my colleagues.
We have one item left on the agenda this evening. If I could find it. PCR 20-24. Solicitor Walsh, are we good to? Yep, hold on one second, please. Okay, we're back on to unfinished business on the agenda this evening, PCR 20-24. This is committee report intergovernmental.
That was moved to the full council.
Okay, so Councilman Sinapi, you are the sponsor. Councilman Sinapi.
So an amendment's necessary due to the unique nature of the lease. Solicitor, do we want to do that now?
Chief, is the department director ready?
The department director is walking back from the Sawtooth Annex right now. There was some miscommunication on what exactly was being asked of us to print out. So he'll be right back.
Thank you. I'll just take 1 minute to kind of educate the procedural aspect of what we're doing here. This item has been referred to us to the floor for the council to discuss, so we will be entertaining public comment at the appropriate time. There was some questions surrounding the process as it relates to what our ordinance say about fiscal notes and what they are and when they need to be delivered. During committee, there was discussion about whether it was submitted timely to the finance committee. I believe that was addressed by the committee members, that they all received it in a timely manner. That was the finance committee receives these in a 1 week ahead. Section 30-5 of the ordinances requires that when these fiscal notes are requested, that they be presented prior to the consideration by the city council. As the chief just reassured those who may not have seen it or received it, a hard copy of the fiscal note relative to PCR 20-24 has been disseminated amongst the council members in advance of the discussion that can follow. So procedurally, we are okay. That leaves it up to the members to discuss the content of everything from their vantage points. And so I would say that it's appropriately before us, and return it back to Councilman Sinapi.
So same question as I had originally as far as the amendment. Should we do that now?
I think we should do it now, just so we know exactly what we're talking about, what we're looking at. And so I would, if you could entertain, make the motion of what the amendment would be. We'll get a second. We'll have for discussion, just so we're all on the same plane, so we know what we're discussing.
So I have to make a motion to amend, and the solicitor has the language and the citations for what language exactly has to be altered.
Okay, so you have made a motion to amend. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Foley. Go ahead, Solicitor Walsh.
So for context purposes, there was a copy of the lease provided here, and that the entity that is seeking tax relief is responsible for a certain portion of taxes under the terms of their 10-year lease. And so Councilman Sinapi is looking to amend the current item to, after line 5, add a new whereas clause that would state, whereas pursuant to the terms of the lease of a portion of 641 Bald Hill Road dated July 27, 2021, the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence is responsible for, quote, 30% of lessor's assessed real property tax expense over $19,500 for each calendar year during the 10-year term, end quote. And so that would be part 1 of the amendment. The next whereas clause that follows, we would be amending that first sentence to add a few words such that it would read in its entirety, whereas the Warwick City Council desires that the amount of taxes due under the current lease terms for the portion of real and personal property of the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence located at 641 Bald Hill Road, Assessor's Plat 263, Lot 69, be exempt from taxation for the portion of the building it occupies. And furthermore, an amendment to the be it resolved clause would make it read, now therefore be it resolved that the Warwick City Council hereby respectfully requests that the Rhode Island General Assembly amend Rhode Island General Law 44-3-3A to add to the list of tax-exempt property, and this is where the amendment would be added, 30% of the lessor's assessed real property tax expense over $19,000 $19,500 for each calendar year remaining on the 10-year lease dated July 27, 2021 for the portion of real property occupied and the tangible personal property of the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence located at 641 Bald Hill Road, Assessor's Plat 263, Lot 69. That is the entirety of the amendment. So we've read it all into the record. The intent here is that the applicant is only, under the terms of a lease, responsible for a portion. They are, Councilman Sinapi is looking to abate essentially the portion of real estate taxes that they would be responsible for, not the entirety of what is being taxed upon the building or the portion of the building that they occupy.
Thank you, Solicitor Walsh. Yep, so thank you for summing that up as well. So my understanding is it's just the portion that this organization is using within, it's not the entire building itself. Councilman Sampi, any additional comments or questions?
So I have nothing new besides what we've stated previously. The past several times this item has come up, and hopefully people realize the purpose of the amendment is to make sure this is as narrow and focused as it's supposed to be. And yes, it's different than what was done for the Center for Mediation, but that's because the lease there was different. This had to be tailored accordingly.
So I would recommend that we vote on the amendment so then we all know exactly what we're looking at. And then I'd like to open it up for comments from the council and comments from the members of the public because we moved it to the floor outside of committee. So we want to give the public an opportunity to speak on that as well. So the solicitor has made the amendment. Mr. Sinapi has made an amendment. It's been seconded. So the clerk will call the roll on the amendment.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley? Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi? Ms. Travis? 9 yes to amend.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're all on the same page. And so I'd like to open it up for any questions or comments from members of the council on this legislation. Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. So a few questions first to our city solicitor, our council solicitor. You said that this fiscal note was delivered to us in a timely manner. Timely as to what date? Timely today or timely April 1st?
In a plain reading of the statute, or of the ordinance, there are two deliverables as it relates to the timing of fiscal notes. The handing out of the fiscal note that is before you satisfies section 30-5 of the ordinances regarding that it has been delivered to you prior to consideration. We are now entertaining consideration. The other piece is section 30-7, which we established during committee that, or was established during committee that the finance committee members received this more than 1 week in advance as required by that section of the ordinance.
So if we're speaking about the fiscal note dated April 1st, that was delivered to the Finance Committee at approximately 4:30 on April 1st, that is not timely by a long shot. That fiscal note, as testified to by the Finance Chair and Councilman Sinapi, was delivered to the Finance Committee at about 4:30, 4:27, something like that. You know, you want to get it to the number, I'm sure they'd have it. That is not timely.
Councilman, as it pertains to the April 1st meeting, you are correct, and that is why the item at that meeting was held to a later date.
Okay, so for clarification, what you're stating is that it's being delivered to us right now, today, and at least by the administration, what they just handed us today, that's timely?
As it pertains to the prior dissemination, as well as the subsequent physical follow-up that was just completed in advance of this. It satisfies the specifics of the ordinance.
Okay. So when we receive a fiscal note, isn't that fiscal note supposed to be accurate? Isn't it supposed to present to us an accurate financial position? Which is why we request the fiscal note. We're requesting the fiscal note so that we know the answers to A, B, C, and D. On April 1st, we were presented with fiscal note. This evening, we are presented with an amendment to the fiscal note. So does that still qualify as a properly delivered fiscal note when the content of the fiscal note we received initially has changed? This is a new fiscal note now, is it not? No, the director can speak in a minute. I'm asking you.
Thank you, Councilman. To my understanding, the item that has been disseminated is the same item that was previously disseminated.
That's correct.
But haven't the numbers changed?
No. The numbers would only change based on amendment that was made, which is limiting the scope from a larger sum to a smaller sum, but that is available for discussion based on the actions taken. We were allowed to come to this point based on the fiscal note as it was introduced. As you make amendments, it's hard for us to ever keep track of on the live changes.
But I don't recall ever having an amendment on a fiscal note.
And you still don't.
Excuse me?
Neil Dupuy, Director of Assessing.
Hold on one second, Director. The councilman is speaking to the solicitor.
So
there's two different issues here, process grounds and substantive grounds. The process under which you previously raised the fiscal note concern, that has been addressed. And so we were able to proceed towards any action or inaction, whatever the council desires. We are here under the construct that the parameters of the original item drafted has been expressed in that fiscal note. The department director is here who has helped work on the limiting language that reduces the tax exposure, and he can express the details of how it may have changed. But we haven't gotten to that point of the conversation yet.
Yield to the director.
Okay. Director, please identify yourself for the record.
Neil Dupuy, Director of Assessing. There is absolutely no change to the fiscal note. What there is a change to, what the amendment reflects, is a change to the resolution based on the ambiguity in the resolution versus the lease that you have in front of you.
So when I was listening to the amendment earlier, there's been changes to this, that, and the other. Are you saying that those changes that are in the amendment do not change any one of these three numbers that we have in our fiscal note?
No, the fiscal note remains the same. The calculations were there initially. It's just the resolution as it was worded, if it got enacted by the General Assembly, might have created ambiguity. So we're trying to clean that up to make sure that didn't happen.
So the exemption is still 5599.11?
For the real estate.
3624.26 for the tangible?
Correct.
And total sum annually would be $9,223.30.
At the current value and the
37
current
cents.
tax rate.
Current
That could
tax rate.
change, but
So could be more, could be less. And that number will be a floating number as tax rates change.
but the variable that would stay the same would be 30% above the 19.5 base tax amount as it was stated in the lease.
Okay. Well, I'm clear on the amendment. Thank you for that, Director. I understand, Solicitor Walsh, you're saying that this is good to go. I find this process very sloppy. Information is being disseminated to us when it's convenient. It's not being sent out to the full council. We're getting last-minute changes last minute notices. This is just, I just cannot get over, what's taking place here. The fact that we get a notice about a fiscal note at 4:30 in the afternoon, and we're supposed to react to it. And we're supposed to just sit back and say, oh, that's fine, let's hear it. Well, this councilman isn't going to sit back and say, it's fine. Even, right up till tonight, we now learn that there was an error in the resolution itself. In the wording of the resolution, it was just stated. So I've expressed, my concerns on this as an particular item, my concerns with it as it impacts the taxpayers, not just on this item, but in totality over the years, in addition to somewheres between, I'm hearing different numbers, 600 to 700 other nonprofits, not just in the city, but throughout the state. I know Councilman Ricks has a commission that he's been trying to get traction on for, I think, as long as he's been on the council, for some assistance for veterans and for seniors, and he can't, because he can't come up with where the money's going to come from. This money has to come from somewheres. And it's just bizarre to me that this item, this amendment, is just coming before us this evening after the administration has had better than 2 weeks to address it. But here we are in the 11th hour. This is what you're going to get, and this is what you're going to vote on. So I think there's a lot of homework that needs to be done with the process, and particularly with the timeliness and transparency of this information that's being either disseminated or not being disseminated. I've spoken at length already as to my position on this. I've expressed my appreciation and the importance of the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. You're all very well aware of my involvement with that organization. But I will not be able to support this item because of what I see happening on a very much larger scale, that the taxpayers are going to end up having to foot the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. And I just had a note here that you just wanted, there wasn't an error in the resolution. They were just cleaning up some ambiguity in the language. So that's what they were doing. It wasn't like an error. So just, any other questions or comments? Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. A question for the tax assessor. I see in the second to last paragraph of the fiscal note that states that the formula for the annual exemption amount would be the total tax bill less $19,500 times 30%. I understand that the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence, that it occupies part of a larger building, and from quickly checking on the tax assessor database, I see that the larger building and that plat and lot has an assessment of just north of 1.5 million total. So I take it, well, rather I want to ask the question where the exemption of the $19,500 comes from, and whether the 30% relates to the office space used by the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, or if the 30% comes from somewhere else.
Sure. Well, in this case, the organization will not be the property owner. There'll be a tenant with a 10-year lease. That's allowed under Rhode Island law, but in that case, the exemption is limited to the taxes that they would pay. In their current lease, the landlord and the tenant worked out an arrangement where they don't pay taxes on the first 19.5. That's where that comes from, straight from their lease. They do pay 30% of the increase in taxes for any amount that gets billed over that amount on an annual basis. So that's why the formula is stated as such. It's actually corresponding to the percentage of the building that they occupy. But that was the ambiguity, because in the resolution as it was worded, it could have been interpreted differently from the fiscal note without having notice of the lease that we have to say that it's 30% of the whole tax bill. And that wouldn't conform with Rhode Island law that we're going under for the 4446 for the 10-year lease statute.
Thank you. That's primarily what I was getting at, making sure that the amount that we're considering exempting is in fact corresponding to the percentage of that total building that the coalition is occupying. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilwoman Travis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I got two concerns. I know the hard work that the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence does. And we have a lot of nonprofit groups that are doing great things in the city of Warwick. My problem is if we do it for one and we start all getting hit with different nonprofits trying to do the same thing, that's going to be a big hit. Or you tell them, no, we can't do it. Now you got them mad at you. And if you do it, well, that's going to hurt. The taxpayers are not going to really like what we're doing. Because the second part is that $9,223.37, that's going to have to get made up somewhere. So it's not going to be the taxpayers? I mean, it's going to fall on somebody. We're losing that from them. That's going to be exempt. I just don't feel comfortable. Maybe somebody can explain it a little better to me. But when I look at it, I see nonprofit knocking on my door telling me, ooh, you got to do the same thing for us. You know, and there's some you can do it for, some you can't do, I can imagine. But I don't think I want to be in that position when they're going to all knock on our doors telling us, hey, I want the same thing you gave them. And then every time you add the 9,000 here and some more over there, that's money that's going to have to come back to us somehow. How we're going to make up for that? So I'm not comfortable with it unless somebody can explain it better. Thank you.
Councilman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I actually have some, the concerns are basically the same as what has been brought up, but a little bit more in depth. If you look at, if we're sending this for this one nonprofit to the General Assembly and saying, hey, please authorize them, it would open the opportunity for other nonprofits to say we would like the same. And to go on what my colleagues' concerns are, my concerns are, as a municipality, our only revenue source is real estate. We don't have the luxury of determining how much pilot money we get, as we found out. We're realizing that the next state budget the car tax reimbursement will not be at the level that was originally discussed in this next budget. So we'll adapt to that. We don't have the availability. We don't have the availability or the legal status to put up gantries, which I would be dead against doing. We have no other ways of sourcing income other than through our real estate. And this is something where I feel, again, this is a general state challenge that I feel the General Assembly could put together a formula. But understand they can put together a formula that benefits all nonprofits, but there's two big concerns I have. One is that it's quite easy to form a nonprofit. And two, they can, what's to say that 2 years down the road, the formula doesn't change? like it's taken away from under us, like maybe the car tax reimbursement or like maybe the pilot money or things such as that. If I was to look at, and I just kind of, my numbers mind went a little crazy. If we have 10 nonprofits that go using the same amount that we're giving to this one nonprofit, that's 56,000 a year in lost revenue. So you could say, well, that's not a lot, but 56,000. But if we have 100 nonprofits, which is very possible within the city, that go for just this amount, that's $500,000. That is the cost of the pilot. That's approximately $560,000 a year of revenue that this city will have to find a way to make up, which goes on what all of us are thinking. And Councilwoman Travis said, where do we get that revenue from? We're paying for direct services. We're paying for our fire to service our constituents. We're paying for our police to service our constituents. We pay for the garbage to pick up and keep our areas clean and safe. We're paying for the cleaning. We're doing everything we can. And my concern is that this is going to open a Pandora's box if we give to the one nonprofit and we don't have a plan for the others. This is something the state ought to take up. But also, to me, it just seems to be much more in depth. I read this. I understand we're sending it to the General Assembly, because my first question was going to be, why are we working on this? And I do realize it's a resolution, but my concern is a broad brush stroke. It's easily to be challenged if they say, well, you gave it to them, how come not? Why not us? They got it. Why not us? It's concerning. I would really prefer to see, and I'm not a lawyer, but I would do this with my children equally. I would prefer to see a set standard before I go and make a decision choosing this one over that one, or selecting this one first and then being put in a situation to select others. And that's where I stand on this. Thank you.
Councilman Gephardt.
Thank you. I'll be brief because I share many of the concerns my colleagues have raised. As you may recall, I was in opposition to the resolution in support of the Center for Mediation, and have been opposed to this one as well. Not on any grounds of the good work that this organization does or any of these organizations do, but simply on just the the matter of picking winners and losers from the benefit of a property and tangible tax exemption. So I'll stay there. And echo the concerns of the rest of the council. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to the public now, and then we'll come back to the council. Is there any members of the public that would like to be heard on this PCR 20-24? Is there any members of the public that would like to be heard? Okay, hearing none, we'll go back to the council. Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to sum it up for me, based upon, or I should say, in addition to Councilwoman Travis and Councilman Howe and Councilman Gedhop's comments, if this type of thing were to pass and Pandora's box was opened up, my guess would be the money is not going to be requested, or at least the lion's share of the money is not going to be requested from the residents. It's going to be pushed on to the businesses. And the businesses are already paying a much higher rate of property taxes. And it's not so hard to do because businesses don't vote. That's an issue. And when, as Councilman Howe pointed out, these numbers can grow in a huge runaway fashion very quickly and very easily. And it's going to be whoever's sitting in this chamber as well as the other chambers across the state You're going to have to find where the money is going to come from. I don't want to be on that boat. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to give Councilman Snappy the last word if there's any other additional questions or comments from the council. I just want to make a note that Councilman Lattiser, I think, brought up some important things about the process, that it did satisfy, the solicitor has explained, it did satisfy, but I think we do need to come up with a plan of how we're going to get these fiscal notes to everybody and stuff like that. So I will be happy to reach out to the administration, and I think that's the best way to do it. And we'll come up with a plan for going forward on how we receive these fiscal notes, and we make sure that everybody gets them in a timely manner. So Councilman Snappy, I'll give you the last word.
Yep. So as a reminder, everyone, we approved this exact thing for the Center for Mediation many months ago, I think October. The floodgates did not open. This is the second one to show up. And obviously both are very reputable organizations who are well known based on name alone, let alone their deeds. And again, as a reminder, everything that's in place now was in place when we voted on the other one. Councilman Lattiser has a very good excuse. He wasn't here. It's not his fault. So yeah, see? The rest of us, those of us who voted in favor then, unless you have an issue specifically with this organization, you should be voting in favor now. There's nothing different here and now than there was before. The concerns, that being said, let's be clear, the concerns that are being stated are not unfounded from the perspective of that the General Assembly screwed us by thinking that every city in town should be coming up with their own unique system of how to handle this. That's ridiculous. It's a perverse way of doing things. There's no doubt at all. And there's also no doubt that we need our own standardized system in place that allows the tax assessor and the council to handle this, and in my opinion, to leave discretion for the tax assessor. And if those may recall, that's what I stated, we'd wait on having the General Assembly act on these until that process was in place. However, we wouldn't make this organization wait through anything more unique than the Center for Mediation waited, given that both of them came in the door before we realized we need to put something in place going forward. It's no hardship of us if there's two of these before the Assembly instead of one. Zero hardship. Especially when, just like the Center for Mediation, the coalition has been here every meeting. Their bill's been up. They've been here for many hours in totality. It doesn't mean your concerns are unfounded to pass this. It doesn't mean what you're saying doesn't matter. None of that is true. The concerns are valid, other than the floodgates one, just because of how things have worked out so far. This reality has shown that the floodgates did not open. It doesn't mean that tomorrow 1,000 won't show up. Sure, that's still perfectly possible, but at least up till now, that has not happened. Thank you, Ed. Well, that we don't know, but regardless, there's very little reason for anyone who voted yes prior to vote no now. So I urge you to vote yes again, as you did before, except unless you're Councilman Lattiser, in which case vote no, because you would have last time anyway.
So
And I
Councilman
move favorable
Snappy-
action.
Yeah, we move favorable as amended.
Yes, please.
Move favorable as amended, second by Councilman Foley and Councilman McElroy and Councilman Rex. It has been moved and seconded. The clerk will call the roll for favorable action as amended.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
No.
Mr. Howe?
No.
Mr. Lattiser?
No.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi? Ms. Travis? 5 yes, 4 no, motion passes.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-4. So going back onto the agenda, we are now moving, we did the one item that was under unanimous consent. Ward 1, anything to docket under unanimous consent this evening? Ward 2?
Pass.
Ward 3?
Pass.
Ward 4?
Pass.
Ward 5. Ward 6. Ward 7 passes. Ward 8. Ward 9. Councilwoman Travis. I did. Yep. All those in favor to move in the docket session, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are in the docket session. I have 3 items to docket on behalf of Mayor Picozzi. They are all pretty much the same. It is a resolution of agreement between the City of Warwick and the Warwick Lodge Number 7 FOP regarding Juneteenth. And a similar one, a memorandum of agreement between the City of Warwick and the Rhode Island Council 94, Local 1651 regarding Juneteenth, and an MOU between the City of Warwick and the Local 2748 IAFF union regarding Juneteenth. I wouldn't put those in the Finance Committee. Ward 1, anything to docket this evening? Pass. Ward 2.
One item, a resolution in relation to recognizing June as Pride Month.
Community Affairs.
And any co-sponsors would be welcome.
I'd like to be co-sponsor. Councilman Foley as well. Councilman Gephardt, Councilman Sinapi, Councilwoman Travis as well. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else to docket?
No further items.
Ward 3. Pass. Ward 4.
Pass.
Ward 5. Ward 6. Ward 8. Ward 9.
I have 2. The first is a resolution to the RIDOT to conduct a traffic study for the intersection of Old Forge Road and Potawatomi Road and the preceding eastbound approach.
Intergovernmental.
And the second is an ordinance to erect stop signs on Hedgerow Drive at the intersection of Ladderlook Drive.
Public Safety. Oh, that's an ordinance. Sorry, Ordinance Committee. All right, thank you very much. We are adjourned.